Please welcome from Keio University, Michael Smith.
聞こえる？お、急に。日本語が苦手だからいつも通りずっと英語で頑張ってください。I'll speak slowly. So, my name's Michael Smith, and today I'm going to be talking about HTML5 in the context of something which Oikawa-san talked about earlier, which is web platform. I think this was already up on the screen, but this was in the slide template. So information about the site, about Twitter. I guess the Twitter user is Google DevJP, hashtag DevFest_JP. So feel free to Twitter about my presentation. つまんないとか、マイクのプレゼンテーションすごくつまらないとか。So yeah, and there's some other URLs. We'll have a place to put the slides up after this, Oikawa-san, on the site? Okay. So I have some other URLs in here of my own that are linked to in the slides, and you'll be able to look at those later. Okay, I'm going to do two things here, which is grab my keyboard and try to remain in the spotlight, but so I can see the screen here. So my name is Michael Smith, as I said. My job is that I work for Keio Daigaku, and more specifically for W3C at Keio Daigaku. My title in English is HTML Activity Lead, but in Japanese it's Tokumei Kakaricho. So feel free. You can call me Mike, or you can just say Tokumei Kakaricho. I don't know. My email address, feel free to email me. It's just mike@w3.org. There's my homepage. On Twitter, I'm Sideshow Barker and Flickr and places like that. Books. Wow, yeah. I saw Tomi earlier, but while I brought some props with me today, and I'll take a moment to show these. So hang on. This book I just got yesterday. Thanks. So this is the second book on HTML5 published in the entire world, or in the entire universe even. This is the first book. This is from Shiraishi-san. I don't know if Shiraishi-san's here. Ah, there he is. Yeah, he's right in front. So, 本当に this is 世界中, these are the first books on HTML that have come out, and they're both great books, and focus a little bit different. And I'll talk in a little more detail about these later. But これある？ここ今日ない。打てる？ああ、OK。Amazon これ。じゃあお願いします。So, agenda. What I'm going to talk about today, if I have time, probably I won't have time to do all this. One thing is I want to talk about the HTML5 Japanese interest group. Next thing, I want to talk about what's the meaning when we say open web platform. What are we talking about? And then what's the key qualities of open web platform? Then I want to spend a lot of time talking about new stuff. So if you get bored in the beginning, just sleep for a while and then wake up when I talk about the new stuff. Because there's definitely some things you probably don't know about. And then next thing, what's going on with IE9? There's going to be some announcements about IE9 next week. In fact, there's going to be some demos of IE9 beta. On the 15th, I think, is the date for that. And the last thing I want to talk about is let you know, I think most of you are developers, programmers, coders. I want to tell you what you should focus your time and attention on, some recommendations. And last thing is kind of a personal thing. I work on a software project that is a HTML5 validator, and we need additional coders. So if you're a good coder, then maybe it's something you could help contribute to. So the HTML5 Japanese interest group. There's a URL for that, and it's linked to in the slides. The chair for that group is Yakura Masataka, who's this guy in the back with the cap on. And this is a real W3C group. So if you're interested in getting involved with HTML5, but you don't have so much time, or you don't want to have to speak and communicate in English, on email in English, this group has a mailing list, and all the communication is in English. And the purpose of this list is actually kind of for us to collect information and bring it back to the HTML working group. So yeah, Nihongo de dozo. The other thing I should mention is that Shirai-san has a list which is called HTML5-developer-JP, right? And so if you're not on that list, you should definitely be on that list. It's a very active list. Information is going out on that list daily, and it's a great place to get new information. And I guess, Shirai-san, you're going to have that in your slides later? Nanji ni? Session. 14時. So yeah, if you want to find out a little more about that, then you can attend that session too. I'm just going to set my timer here, 38 minutes, okay. Okay, so what do we mean when we talk about the open web platform? Well, first thing is, to use this laser pointer, so because it's just too fun. HTML is the foundation of everything else. We can't have web applications or web documents without HTML. The next piece of the puzzle that's important, of course, is CSS, and especially CSS3. But along with CSS, something else that I think Oikawa-san touched on is how important it is to have fonts, open fonts, downloadable fonts. Because if you don't have good typography, your CSS looks like crap anyway. So you got to have nice fonts, and we need for them to be open and free. Next thing that's really important is the W3C DOM and browser APIs that are related to that. So mostly, I'm actually not going to talk much about HTML today. I'm not going to talk hardly at all about CSS or fonts, but I am definitely going to talk about APIs, some new APIs. And then another thing, which is JavaScript. JavaScript is not a W3C technology. JavaScript comes from ECMAScript, from the ECMA technical committee. So it's a different standards body, but JavaScript is, of course, really important. It is the scripting language, client-side scripting language for the web. There's been some other movement towards getting some other scripting languages supported, but the only thing that's supported across major browsers is JavaScript. SVG. I'm going to talk actually several times about SVG during the next 30 minutes or so. SVG is massively important, and after next week and during the next few months is going to become even much more important. Another thing that we forget about is HTTP, just because it just works. So we don't need to worry about it. But also TLS. TLS is very important for a lot of reasons and is going to become more important. TLS and SSL is important, for example, for WebSockets. For a variety of reasons. One of the reasons is that we need a way to get around proxies that are going to monkey with the data that we're sending. There's another thing to Google. I haven't heard much about this thing lately, but Speedy, S-P-D-Y. I hope Google's going to do more with that thing, but that's also, I think, all of the information that's sent using Speedy is using TLS. It's all encrypted. IRIs. IRIs are International Resource Identifiers. It's the new name for URIs, but it basically just means URL. And we have some issues with URLs. We're actually working on a new spec for IRIs because of it being necessary to bring it into line with the way that browsers actually behave. So, web platform fundamentals. I just talked about HTTP and TLS and IRIs and URIs. I will say there's a new IETF working group that's working on IRIs. HTTP, there's some new work there. TLS is 2.0 pretty much works now, so we don't need to change that. But these are some fundamental pieces that we rely on that we don't talk about much. Some other things, just various things that are part of the platform that are new, that we're getting some client-side support for, but that I should talk about. One is media fragments. Media fragments is just the way that you can put a fragment ID into a video or audio track. Well, you don't have to put it into it necessarily, but you can get to a certain part of a video using a fragment identifier. CSS OM, we have the DOM, which is the way that markup is represented in the browser. CSS OM is a way to represent the CSS object model, and the view module is part of that. Another thing is MathML. MathML is not nearly as important as SVG, but it's still important. If you want to put equations up on the web, if you want to deal with scientific data on the web, or a lot of different things, you need MathML to be able to represent that. And that's just a few things that are not mentioned too often, but that I thought were worth mentioning today. CSS, wow, look at all this stuff. This is not even the complete list. And in fact, I had to squish some stuff together to get this on one page. But of course, we started with CSS 2.1. CSS 2.1 is still not completely supported in all major browsers. All browsers have some level of lack of support, I think, still for CSS 2.1. But we're almost there. But the next big, huge thing that's important is CSS3 selectors. To be able to use the more advanced CSS3 selector syntax. And I think we're also going to hear some good news next week from Microsoft about selectors. CSS media queries, that gives you a way to query the capabilities of a device. Very important. CSS3 text, very important. CSS backgrounds and borders, another thing that's really web designers have been waiting on for a very long time. The ability to do rounded corners, for example. I think the stuff on box shadow and stuff is part of backgrounds and borders too. Colors, we need to be able to use human language color names and do other things with CSS colors. That's supported pretty well in a number of browsers now. Another very, very super cool thing, CSS3, declarative 2D and 3D transformations. So using CSS, you don't need Canvas, you don't need SVG, you can declaratively we don't call it markup, you can declaratively specify transformation behavior for content on your pages. This is massively cool. Also massively cool is this, CSS3 transitions and animations. This is something that Apple I think, put the initial proposals forward for, and that's supported in WebKit and Safari now. Also massively cool. Without needing to really do any programming, you can use CSS to have transition animation effects. CSS 3-page media. There's news about this week, which is Hamaji-san's working on this now, I think. Yeah, so page media is the way that you can make a presentation like this, just using HTML, because you can use page break before, page break after. You can use the projection screen type, and that's going to be very cool. A multi-column layout. It's another feature that's really useful for marking up certain kinds of content. You want to have more than one column on a page. And a lot of people don't know this, but CSS3 also has, CSS also has a namespace mechanism that you can use to specify which rules apply to which namespace content. And the last thing is WOF, which is a funny name, but it just stands for Web Open Font Format. And this is about downloadable fonts. Mozilla is kind of leading the way on this, actually, at this point. But I think everybody's going to fall behind this. This is going to be a big thing. So that's CSS and fonts. APIs. These are APIs that aren't part of HTML5 and never were part of HTML5, but of course these APIs all have some kind of binding with the JavaScript language, which people like to officially call ECMAScript. But that's ECMAScript 5 now is the number that's up to. A very important API that's part of the web platform, geolocation. Ability to have a web application get sensor information about your location data from a device, your Android device, iPhone, even your laptop. Device orientation, this is new. I'll talk about this before I'm done today. A file API, very important. Is Nakamura-san here? I saw him earlier, yes. There's a guy here named Nakamura who did a presentation a couple weeks ago about the file API and using some drag and drop stuff and also using some features in Mozilla that detect the orientation of the device. So if you see Nakamura-san around, he can show you his demo today. It's very cool. Selectors API, this is CSS selector syntax, but you can use it to select parts of a DOM tree instead of using DOM interfaces. This is very, very cool. This is like jQuery, basically, what you can do in jQuery, except we're standardizing it. DOM level 3 events. Events are very important, of course. Element traversal. This is a minor spec, but it's still very useful. It allows you to skip over text nodes in the DOM tree more easily and just get to the elements. And a lot of people don't know this, but there never has been a standard published for XHR, for XML HTTP request. And we're working on publishing a standard for that, but that's obviously a key part of the platform. And one more thing is a spec that we're working on, which is called cross-origin resource sharing. And what that's about is allowing you to use resources like scripts across domains. Or across origins, I should say. So you don't have, you can get past the same origin security policy. HTML5, again, a truckload of stuff here. HTML5 core, one of the biggest features that's part of this is the new forms support. And again, this is something that the Google engineering team here in Japan is contributing to very actively and working on. Video support, the video element and the audio element. Drag and drop, which I talked about earlier, a mechanism for allowing you to drag parts of a page around. Offline applications, kind of a simple API, but still very important. Allows you to use, do some smart caching. You can control caches directly. Ruby, this means not the Ruby programming language, but like furigana, yomigana. And this is supported now in Chrome and in WebKit. Again, thanks to engineers from Google Japan. A guy named Roland Steiner is the one that implemented this. And of course, Canvas. Canvas, as part of HTML5, has a 2D API, but there's also now a 3D API, which is based on something called WebGL. This is not being done at W3C, but this is just basically OpenGL with some simple, it's a simple set of bindings directly to OpenGL in JavaScript. Web storage. When we talk about web storage, what we mean is DOM storage, session storage, local storage in the browser. Instead of using cookies, you can use local storage. I think most of you probably know quite a bit about this already. What you might not know is that the SQL database API is not going to be implemented by Mozilla. It's not going to be implemented by Microsoft. They've said that, absolutely. What we have as an alternative is something that's called the Index Database API. And I'll talk a little bit about that later too. We have web workers, which is massively important as a way to do sort of like message passing or thread-like operations. Most programming languages have something like web workers as a means for allowing you to deal with background processes. So this is adding a very important feature to the web platform. The messaging APIs, which is one is cross-document messaging. This is a post-message interface. It's a way you can share information between different windows in an application. Channel messaging is another piece of messaging that maybe you're not as familiar with. Shiraishi-san covers this in his book pretty well, so if you pick up that book, you can get up to speed on channel messaging. WebSocket, another very important thing. I'll talk briefly about this in a little bit, but there's two parts to it. There's the browser API, and there's the protocol, network protocol. There's an older thing called server-sent events, which is still supported, and I think it still has some plans to be implemented in browsers, but it's less important now that we have WebSockets, because server-sent events it kind of covers some of the same use cases, but WebSockets does it much more completely. Another thing is we have this mechanism for adding metadata to pages. It's called microdata. It's part of HTML5. We also have something which solves the same use cases, which is called RDFA. And microdata already has an API, which is really good. And RDFA folks are working on an API for RDFA too. The last thing I want to mention is something that's related to accessibility, which is called ARIA. And it's a way that you can add features to your web applications that make them easier or make it possible for them to be used by people, for example, the blind users or users with visibility problems. Oh, shit. I didn't mean to get that far yet. Let's go back here. HTML5. Okay. Key qualities of the web platform. What sets the web platform apart, and why are we putting all this work into it? Well, one of the most important quality actually is it's truly open. If these features that we're adding to the web platform allow you to choose what application you want to use to access the web. You can use any browser you want. So you have the choice. The choice is in your hands, and all the work that we're doing is open and free based on open standards. What we're really working on in HTML5 is making the browser an application platform. Not just a way to deliver documents, but a way to run applications. And what we want to do as part of that is make web applications, is allow you as web developers to make web applications with feature parity with desktop applications and with other application platforms. When I say other application platforms, I mean, for example, if you can develop some very cool app on the iPhone using the Apple Developer SDK, or you can develop on Android using the Dalvik SDK. Well, we want you to be able to develop those same kind of applications, but have them run in the browser, and not be native applications run on a device, but they can run in any browser. And to do that, we need to add some features. That's why we're adding Canvas. That's why we're putting this work into SVG. That's why we're adding video. That's why we're doing all this API work. To make it possible for you to program applications that run in the browser. Another super important thing is accessibility. We want it to be possible for all people to use web applications, even people who are blind or who have vision disabilities or who have other disabilities. This is really important. And as a web developer, you have an obligation to make your applications usable by as much as you can by everybody, including people who can't see. So if you do something with Canvas, or you do something with SVG, or you do something with video, you know, this means making an effort to make that content also accessible to people who can't see or who have other problems accessing the content. Last thing I want to mention is that we want to make the web safe and try to, I was going to say keep it safe, but the web already is unsafe. We just don't want to make it less safe. So we want everything that we do, we want to make sure that it protects your security and your privacy and the security and privacy of your users and your customers. I want to talk about HTML5, the next milestones that we're looking at. So people often ask me, you know, when's HTML5 going to be done? And I never answer that question because it's the wrong question. The right question is, what's the next thing ahead? And the next thing ahead is what we call LC, or last call. I hope that we're going to get to last call in 2010, this year, before the end of the year. What does going to last call means? Well, it means the spec is feature complete. It means we quit adding features to the spec. We maybe will remove some, but at some point we have to stop adding features. And we're kind of there already. I don't think that there's going to be any new features in HTML5. So for people who are writing books, then that makes it easier. But also for all of us who are trying to learn this stuff, you know, we want the features to stop being added at some point so that we can start getting this to standard. Another thing is that we have issues within the HTML working group where people disagree. We have to get all those issues resolved before we can start last call. So we have to get the people who are in disagreement, we have to get them to agree with each other. This is the hardest part, actually. Getting this done, getting these issues resolved, getting people to agree. This is why standards work is hard, because people don't agree, and you can't force them to agree. You know, you have to get them to understand that we have to compromise, or we have to have some middle ground. That's what we're trying to do. So when we get all these issues resolved, then we will start last call. Hopefully that'll be before this fall, maybe this summer. Now to get to the end of last call once we're started, what does that mean? Well, we have to collect comments from the community. So when we start a last call round, that means everybody in the world can come in and make comments on the HTML5 spec. And when they do that, we have to record those comments. We have to put them into a database and keep track of them, and we have to respond to all of them. So we're looking at, when we do this last call round, we're looking at getting thousands of comments, quite likely. And then we have to respond to all of them. This is going to take some time. These are the two hardest parts, getting all the issues resolved, responding to all the comments. And that is going to take some time. I won't tell you how much time, but it's probably longer than you would think. Okay, recent news. Just going to check on time here. 17 minutes. Orientation events. Did anybody know about this spec? Has anybody seen this spec yet? Nakamura-san, これ見ました? Orientation, すごく新しいの. This came out maybe 2 days ago, I think. But the guy who's writing the spec is named Andrei Popescu. He's the guy who wrote the geolocation spec. This guy, he used to work for Nokia. He works for Google now. I don't know Steve Block. I never have met Steve, but Steve's the other co-editor on this. What is this? Well, it adds 2 new DOM event types, orientation event, accelerator event. This is a complementary spec to the geolocation API. This enables web apps to access device orientation sensors in Android, iPhone, any other device, your laptop too. You know, if you have a Macintosh laptop or other laptops, it has an accelerometer in it. So this would allow you to write a web application that gets that accelerometer data, just like you do with iPhone or Android development now, except it works in the browser. This is the interface for the orientation event. Very, very, very simple. You have these 3 attributes, theta, phi, gamma. You have some other normal things that specify whether it can bubble, etc. So simple, dead simple. There's a second interface, which is accelerometer event. And I won't go into detail about this, but X, Y, and Z have to do with the, I think the compass, I don't know, I won't speculate about this, but I didn't look at this interface in much detail yet, but they're basically sort of equivalents to theta, phi, and gamma. So, very simple example. To register an orientation event, to register to receive orientation events, you know, this is a simple bit of code you do. You register a listener, and when that listener receives an event, it does something with it. And the event has these properties, theta, phi, and gamma, and those are what you act on. That's the event information. And so what are theta, phi, and gamma? Well, if you have a device, and you hold it like this, you have 2 planes. You have a plane that's coming out perpendicular, like this way, and you have this plane. And you have 3 axes. So you have the perpendicular axes that it can rotate on. You have this axis going down the middle of the device, and you have an axis going across sideways on the device. So you can rotate the device like this, you can rotate it like this, or you can rotate it in the plane like this. That's all it is. That's theta, phi, and gamma, 3 axes. So if you look at theta, that's the perpendicular axis, the one that goes this way, and then phi and gamma are related to the other 2 axes. And if you look at, in terms of a simple example, if you have the device laying flat on a horizontal surface with the top of the screen pointing this way, then theta value is 90. That's it. So anytime the device changes a position, it fires an event. That event gets consumed by whatever listener you've set up. Really, really simple interface. This is one of these kind of things where you almost don't need a spec for it because it's so common sense, but we still need to spec this stuff. New books this month. These books both just came out this month, I think, and they're available. You can actually get them now from Amazon. Okay, so they are actually available. These are the first, as I mentioned, these are the very first HTML5 books anywhere in the entire world, and they give some information about some of the stuff I'm talking about today. So this is a big new event for us, and this is really great that the first books about HTML5, are from Japanese authors and developers. Okay, here's a new thing, which is really, really cool. Index database spec. I talked about this earlier. This is the URL for the published version of it. This is the editor's draft. What's important about this is that it's not SQL, because there are issues with implementing SQL on the client side. I won't go into detail, but like I said, Microsoft and Mozilla feel that those issues are too much of an obstruction that they're not willing to implement it. What this means is that it also has no built-in standard query language. So it's a database API, but no query language. It's client-side, of course, stored in the browser. And then just to note, when we talk about local databases, these are per application databases. Or if you want to go into splitting hairs, it's per origin. So each application can store a database. And this is a real database. This is not a name value store. It's based on a backend like a B-tree. If you're familiar with B-tree databases, the browser can implement it however it wants. But it is an indexed database. It's not just simple flat name value storage. What can happen with this is that somebody like the jQuery guys or other people can build query languages on top of this. Or anybody can build whatever they want on top of it. You're not locked into SQL syntax. So this is a nice thing. Index database work in WebKit and Chrome. This is also this is breaking news. Jeremy Orlow has been working on this. Well, he's been communicating on mailing lists about it, but he's actually started checking in some code. I think the target for this is version 6. I don't know, but I'm just guessing. It seems like it's not going to get in version 5. Is 5 shipped already, betas, or it hasn't? Okay, well, I guess it could maybe go into 5. Dev channel has. Okay, so almost certainly this is not going to be in 5, it'll be in 6. So it's going to be several weeks, or probably more like 2 or 3 months before this support even shows up in nightlies of WebKit or Chrome Dev channel releases. But Jeremy is working on this actively, it seems. New status. Okay, I got a complaint to make to you Google guys, which is you have this great page which lists all the platform supports, web platform support status in Chrome, but it hasn't been updated since December. That's why I put this frown face. So somebody should update this. But actually this page, even as it is now, provides a lot of good information. So if you haven't seen this page yet, go look at that. That tells you about the level of support that you're going to find in WebKit and Chrome now for a lot of these standards. Forms. Yeah. Kent Tamara is working on this pretty actively, I know still. I think the thing that he's found and that anybody who works on forms finds is it takes a lot of work and a lot of time. This is going to be several more weeks, months, I don't know. Hard to predict, but it seems like also that's going to be in 6, I would guess. I'm just guessing. I don't have any inside information here. Minutes I got, thanks. Okay, what to expect in IE9? What's going to happen next week is there's this event called Mix 2010. It's going to be March 15th and 17th in Las Vegas. They're going to demo IE9 builds. They're going to have new support for HTML5 and CSS and APIs. I'm going to make some guesses about what we're going to see in there. SVG, very important. I think you can bet good money if somebody wants to take the bet that there's going to be a very important announcement about SVG. Other things you can expect: nearly complete CSS3 selector support, CSS3 border radius, you can do rounded corners, DOM level 3 events support, a very much faster and very much better JavaScript engine, video. I don't know, could be, I'm hoping, but I think eventually we will see video in IE. I don't know whether it'll be announced next week or not. 2D canvas support, index database. Microsoft has said they absolutely will be implementing the index database API. I don't know whether they'll announce that next week or not, but it will be in there eventually. What features should you be spending time learning more about? SVG. No joke. I mean, SVG is that important, and you will not be wasting your time if you go buy a book about SVG now, or if you spend the next entire week studying SVG. That will not be wasted time. Canvas. Canvas is also extremely important. Canvas, I think you can bet money, is going to be implemented in IE also. So start learning it now. These are the most important 2 features that have been added to the platform in the last 10 years since we got CSS support. You can quote me on that. And we're going to see support in IE, and these are very powerful new tools, and there's a lot to learn there, so start studying and learning those now. Video. If you're not hip to HTML5 video yet, the API, start learning that. It's a very simple API actually, but very powerful. WebSockets. WebSocket support is in Chrome on the client side. It's got some server-side support in some libraries like and some servlet engines like Jetty. The Google also built a Python implementation. And what is WebSockets? I don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but WebSockets is basically a TCP socket. If you're a programmer who's worked in Java or C++ or anything else, you know that you have a mechanism for opening a socket and using a socket to do socket communication. That's basically all this is. It's a socket. And so this means you don't need to do stuff with Comet anymore. What else is new? We have some new things that are related to accessibility. The most important one for right now is this multi-track API. What this allows you to do is have secondary tracks along with your video that provide other information, like an audio description, like somebody doing sign language. For somebody who can't hear, you have a synchronized sign language video, closed captions and subtitles. This is the API for, this is how it starts. You add a tracks attribute to the HTML media element. HTML media element is video and audio. It shares the same interface. And what does media tracks do? Well, you can associate multiple media track, singular instances. And what does media track interface look like? Well, it has a name, role, type, media, language, attribute. This is all a draft still. This has not been finalized yet, but we're working on this. And what are these values? Well, you have a track name, you have a track role, type, media. The name is just an arbitrary name. The role is like subtitle or sign language or audio. 5 minutes I got. A MIME type and the human language, what language the track is in, and then just enabled or disabled. Simple code example. If you want to enable a caption track, you have this attribute, you set it to caption, and then you set enable to true. If you want to enable a French language subtitle track, you use the subtitle role attribute and you set the language to French, and then you set it enable to true. Very simple and straightforward. ways that you can get involved in helping us build the web platform. Mozilla and WebKit Chromium are 100% open source engines, so the quickest way that you can get involved if you want to do coding is you can get the browser code, check it out, make some changes, and start sending patches. A good thing is to actually fix bugs. There's lots of unresolved bugs that WebKit has and that Chrome has, and if you start fixing bugs for the projects, you will become very popular, and you will be helping out quite a bit. Google Summer of Code's coming up. I know Chromium's project is participating in that, and Mozilla participates in that every year too. And you can become a Google Summer of Code student coder, get involved. Or you can get hired by Google or Mozilla here in Japan. Microsoft and Opera also have engineering teams here. They're always looking for people. And if you're a student or you're interested in interning, I think everybody's got intern programs too. I know Mozilla has a very big intern program, and they're always looking for developers. So that's one big way you can get involved. Another way you can get involved is to help me personally, which would be the very best way that you could help of all. I'm kidding, but I'm working on an engine which I didn't create, but it's a validation tool. It's created by a guy in Finland named Henry Sivonen. It's called validator.nu. This is an open source tool. It's Java backend. It's using Jetty as a servlet engine. It's web-based, of course. It's SAX. It uses SAX pipelines, SAX filters. There's many features that we want to add to this that it's only 2 of us working on this now, and I got 1 minute. And if you are a coder that's interested, you can go to this About page. You can email me, let me know, and I can give you some bugs to fix or give you features to add. Especially if you're a Java programmer and you're already familiar with SAX, you could just get started on this right away. And this would be a great way to help contribute to what we're trying to do with HTML5. Okay, so if you have questions, we're going to be in here from 11:45, which is now, I think, till 12:15, and I can answer questions from you guys, and I appreciate your attention and time, and I want to say arigatou gozaimasu. Thanks.